to the stage for the next address of the morning to hear what the future holds for us all, Chris Chong.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Chris, and we're really happy to be here for the first time after COVID to Dubai. My last visit was a few years ago. So during this trip, just a few days ago, we landed. I see a lot of similarities, but at the same time, I also see differences, which I hope that, through this morning's sharing from what we have done in Singapore, you'll find it relevant, and also to share some of the thoughts that we have over the last few years. So maybe before I begin, I just want to give a very brief introduction about Capitaland. As a group, we started about 20 years ago in the year 2000, but at that time, we were a developer. The last 2-3 years, there were a lot of changes, so we took the time during the COVID period to re-transform ourselves. And right now, the platform that we are listed in is an investment management platform. So what it means is that we measure ourselves now through the asset under management, the portfolios that we hold, as well as being just not a developer of assets that we own, but we also look at managing together with partners that we find across the different countries that we operate in. So in total right now, under our asset under management, we have about $100 billion of portfolio, and this spans across the different asset classes, which in this snapshot, you will see that besides Singapore, China as the core market, we are also present in India, but essentially in the business park and industrial areas. Where commercial and retail is concerned, we are definitely on the lookout to see whether there are opportunities. And in this part of the world, we are also starting to look at potential opportunities, and we will probably be making a lot more trips from now on to Middle East. In terms of the different asset classes, besides retail and commercial, we are very present in a lot of the markets, essentially in the hospitality area, whereby we are currently the largest service apartment operator in the world, with brands such as Ascott, Somerset. We just acquired Oakwood last year, and also in Australia, we acquired the Quest portfolio. So that's one of the key strengths that we have. But coming to retail, it is one of the key DNA that Capitaland has, because we started about 20 years ago really with a very small portfolio, about 4 shopping malls. But over the years, we have grown in the core markets, essentially in Singapore, in China. So Singapore right now, we have close to about 25 shopping malls, and in China, about 53 shopping malls across the different cities. One of the key flagship chain that we operate is the Raffles City chain of integrated assets, and this is also one of the key learnings that we use to experiment in terms of retail. Across the different assets that we own and operate, one of the key things is that we do it fully in-house. So where retail is concerned, we have the leasing network. We hardly go through the third-party agents, and the leasing team that we have has been doing this for almost the past 20 years. So just sharing about retail for this morning. I think some of the key trends that we see over the last few years, I think the first thing clearly is that where digitalization is concerned, the digital transformation, the innovation is really very present in all the minds of the retailers. A few years ago, people like to say that retail is dead because of the onslaught of like e-commerce and what we see the growth of the digital commerce. But one of the key things that I want to highlight is that when we look at information, when we look at data, comparing the different statistics that you see, one of the key things that we always fall into is that we tend to compare cities with countries, right? And I think that's one of the key things that where retail is concerned is always about being local. So when you compare, say, for example, the performance of retail in Dubai versus that of Singapore versus that of China, it will be a very dangerous thing to do, to compare between what's happening in the US, China as country level data versus what you see in the cities. Because when you look at retail trends, we should be very sensitive to what happens in the respective cities, because the shopping behavior is clearly and will clearly be very different depending on the cities that you situate in. So where Singapore is concerned, The online shopping right now is still about 13 to 14% based on the latest statistics. And that's actually a drop from the COVID period where it was about between 20 to 25% at the peak. So post-COVID, we do see a drop, but at the same time, does it mean that we will just focus on brick and mortar? The answer is no, because when you look at the evolving expectations of the consumers, we see that they will shop through various channels. And through a survey that we recently did in Singapore, the top 2 factors that will influence the shopper's behavior before they make a purchase is, number 1, what do they see online? And number 2 is really the word of mouth. But in today's context, word of mouth really means what they see on the social media. What do they see on TikTok? What do they see on Instagram? The kind of comments that they read. So it is really important that whether you are in the real estate business for retail or whether you are operating as a retailer, then you have to be really sensitive to the kind of consumers to know exactly the kind of merchandise that they are really excited about. The third point is in the area of metaverse. I think where metaverse is concerned, I mean, we are all trying out new things. We are all trying to see, what's the kind of returns, from the various activations that we do. But it is an area that we can't ignore because in order to attract, in order to recruit, the young consumers of today, you really need to think about whether you want to do things in this area. So in the area of metaverse, we have did already 2 rounds of events. So we partner with banks, we partner with the entertainment players like Zouk in Singapore, and we did a 24 round-the-clock activation where music, performers were online, the consumers themselves were able to have their avatars, and I think it was a very interesting experiment that we did. And what's interesting as well is that after this whole exercise, we found that close to 40% of the young millennials or even the Gen Zs that we were targeting, they were new recruits that the retailers never saw before. And I think that's one of the key things that kind of says that, where retail is concerned, you always need to kind of try out the new things and new areas. The fourth point I wanted to share is really in terms of the shift towards experiential retail. Earlier on, we saw names like Shine, that is very big, in various countries right now where the e-commerce is concerned. So recently, 2 months ago, we did the first pop-up brick and mortar with them, and the kind of response that we got was incredible because just by simply having a 1-week pop-up, we saw queues from the ladies, from the girls who were always online shopping, but when they look at the kind of products that really moved in the physical pop-up, what worked was that in terms of the colors, in terms of the fabric, the touch and feel, they were able to move a lot of the products that they felt online, they were not able to. And I think that kind of represents the new way of partnership between the brands and ourselves in the future, that we should not have this mindset that if you are brick and mortar, then you just want to focus on a certain kind of consumers. Because end of the day, people come to the store, they like what they see, but you will miss out on consumers who will always be shopping online simply because they can never find what they want in the brick and mortar store. The last point is really the focus on sustainability. I guess, these days, everyone's talking about sustainability, everyone's saying that, we need to support. But what it really means through our experience in retail is that especially where millennials and the younger generations are concerned, they are thinking more about the causes that they support. I think for the new generation, when they believe in the kind of missions, the kind of causes that the brands support, then all the more they will make the decision to support by their purchases, by their behavior, the kind of brands that they wear, the kind of brands that they carry. It is really important to show that, it is not just about talking about sustainability, but it is also walking the talk about the kind of missions and the kind of causes that is very clearly supported by the different brands. So with all these points that I've just shared, retail is really about transforming not just as a physical location, it is about creating a platform whereby you put together from shopping to the last mile logistics to community gatherings, as well as discovery and also this element of entertainment put together. And what it really means is that we are going into this whole new area of being a lifestyle platform, which we can't really escape from when we talk about the kind of experiences that we want to put across to our consumers. And I think where the different products that we have put and built over the last few years, I want to share a few of them. In Singapore, we own and operate close to about 25 shopping malls. And I think the key difference that we see is that we don't really have a very mega mall concept. The kind of retail that we do, we prefer to spread them and split across different locations, but each of the locations probably cater to a different type of consumers. Jewel Changi Airport was created and started to operate in the year 2019. It was a bit unfortunate that it opened 2 months before the onslaught of COVID. But when we saw the reopening last year in Singapore after July, in terms of the traffic, in terms of the patronage, it has gone tremendously successful. And I think the whole point about creating a product that is just next to the airport is about serving the different customers that come through. So when we look at the DNA of Jewel, it is really about serving the needs of the transit passengers who will have maybe in between their journeys more than 4 hours that they can come out to do their shopping, to kind of just experience and also to relax. But before this was built, it was just an open-air car park next to the airport. So it's about the creative use of locations. The second example that I want to cite is that of Iron Orchard. So this is not new. It was started in the year 2009, 2010. But in terms of the positioning, in terms of the luxury that we have put in place, it took us quite a number of years. And where luxury shopping is concerned, what we learned as well, especially during the pandemic period, is that the focus on the local VIPs, the local VICs, are very important. Because when you talk about the experiences, the different levels of luxury service that you can put in place, what really supports the business, whether there's a pandemic, whether there's other issues going on, is that we should never forget the locals, because if you can serve the locals well, you will find that the tourists will also come. I think in many locations that we go to, we see that there will be certain locations that are catered for the tourists, there will be certain locations that are catered for the locals, but what is key is that when we are tourists, we like to see locals, right? Because tourists don't like to see tourists. And I think that's really one of the key points that when we create different locations, we want to make sure that this is the go-to location for the locals first and foremost, because that in return should drive the traffic from all the other consumers. And the last one is Funan, which I have a separate slide later on. It's an interesting project as well, which also opened in the year 2019, just before COVID. But it is really one of the newest experiment that we did, because before that, it was just a very old computer shopping center selling all sorts of IT gadgets. But what we did was a very big consumer survey before that. And when we created this product, we listened to the various retailers, the various shoppers about what they would like to see. So I'll share a little bit more about Funan in my next few slides. The other projects that I wanted to highlight will be that of Raffles City, which is a very old shopping mall. It's about 48 years old now. And the thing that we are now looking at in Singapore is that the various assets that are aging, we will need to look at repositioning. And that is where, in terms of the asset enhancement strategies, the asset enhancement repositioning ideas comes into play. And we have, in all these transformations, really think about in terms of location, in terms of the consumers that we want to target, who are these that we want to do. So one of the key things is that we should never forget to do and engage the consumers before we start and embark on any repositioning. So Raffles City today, when we look at the repositioning, it is home to more than 50 new brands over the last 2 years that have been introduced. And when we look at Sephora, for example, it is also the first store of the future that they have unveiled together with us, whereby there are no cashiers. And in terms of the behaviors of the beauty, it serves to also look at the different skin tones in Southeast Asia, because Singapore sitting at the crossroad between the various big countries, from Indonesia to Malaysia to Thailand, Vietnam, etc., we have trialed a project together with Sephora, and I think that's one of the key things that when we look at cities like Singapore, it has an interesting role to play as a springboard to the rest of Asia, in Southeast Asia. The other project is that of Clarke Quay. So it used to be like a night entertainment area, but post-COVID, the issue was that where entertainment is concerned, there was a lot of constraints. And when you have a location that is just focused on entertainment, then what you miss out is really the day trade. And when we transform a precinct, we have to think about, besides just entertainment, can we put in place other kinds of lifestyle concepts that will drive the day to night precinct. So we have put in place amenities like pet friendly. We have put in place different kind of trades where it is focused not just on the night entertainment, but also in terms of music, for people to look at potteries. And if you want to just spend a lazy day out, you know, whether during the weekend or during the week itself, then this is the go-to place in Singapore. And lastly, Bugis Street is also an interesting project because it's a precinct where there's a lot of old buildings. And right now what's on trend is that we need to know how to conserve, and we have to study about the heritage. Because what resonates in today's consumers is also the fact that we do not want to unleash a lot of wastage when we redevelop buildings. So we need to learn how to conserve, how to have the preservation of heritage in the various buildings that we make enhancement upon. So Bugis Street used to be an area where there's a lot of entertainment in the 60s, in the 1960s, and this was also very near to the port. So preserving all this heritage means a lot, and when we bring the brands, we will also infuse that element of a differentiation. So one word about digitalization. So today, where the digital transformation journey is concerned, we also run one of the most widely accepted digital vouchers in Singapore. As of this year, we have fully digitalized, and with an acceptance of close to 1.5 million consumers in Singapore, and with a float of more than 100 million US dollars in Singapore at the moment, it is the most widely adopted. But what I want to say about B2B2C is that a lot of times, right, and I've never seen, you know, until today, a loyalty program that really makes a lot of money. What I wanted to say is that the cost of customer acquisition keeps getting more and more expensive. And how then can we control the cost of running a huge loyalty program is really about a B2B2C collaboration. What it means is that when we have all this digital information, when we have all these digital analytics, we need to make sure that it's a win-win with our B2B partners, because they need to see data, they need to know that what we do is able to power and transform their business as well. So the B2B collaboration, B2B2C collaboration is very powerful, because what it means is that you don't have to spend too much in terms of customer acquisition on your own, but you need to collaborate, whether it's with retailers, whether it's with the office tenants that we have and access to. It is one of the key things that we are putting in place as a platform, and that was how, in a very short time, we grew to 1.5 million. And that brings me to the point of collaboration beyond our conventional roles, because when we do, how do we do the outreach is that we will have events that reach us out to the retailers. We will pull together the different partners in the industry to share the different learning programs, whether it's the thought leadership, whether it is through sharing of, you know, fair tenancy framework that we started between the landlords and the tenants in Singapore, agreeing on the kind of principles, you know, about how going ahead, should we sign the kind of leases, the kind of structures. All these were platforms that we spent a lot of time on the last 2 years. We even created what we called a Future Economy Council in Singapore, and that is one of the key councils that identify for the next few years, should we go into the night entertainment, should we go into lifestyle, and what kind of key hero events that we need to do every year. One of the key things is that when we set this kind of benchmark, then we need to be very clear about how many events we need to set per year and who are we targeting. So it's a lot of collaboration with the tourism industry, with the government, as well as with the industry. So this, my last slide. Earlier on, I mentioned about Funan as a very interesting transformation. So what we put in place in Funan, which there was a lot of positive feedback from the industries all across, is that it was actually one of the first malls that we put a cycling track inside, a bicycle track. We have a basketball court in the atrium, and we have also what we call the Tree of Life. So it sounds very interesting, a Tree of Life, but what it means is that across the 4 floors of retail, the different pods that we create are ever-changing. So you can take it for a week, you can take it for 3 months, you can take it for a year. And what we are trying to say is that in today's society, given the digital platforms, given how easy things are, anybody can be a retailer in 5 minutes. If you have goods to sell, as long as you can create, you can be a retailer with us. So you just bring the goods and everything is plugged in. So it's a plug and play, and we call it the Tree of Life. So, this is really one of the key concepts that we put in place. And, with the various success that we have put in place in this transformation, we saw that there was close to a 78% retention where the tenants were concerned, because this is our year 3 in running this location. So I think with this, I just want to end my presentation this morning by saying that we are looking at going global with our asset operating platform, and really we are looking at transforming, and we are hoping to look at partnerships where repositioning of your assets are concerned, and we are open to partnerships in this area. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.